Okay, so everyone, today I want to talk about Copilot Cowork, but my colleague a couple weeks ago, Daniel Laskowitz, did a really good intro to this in this call. So I figured I'm going to take what he showed as far as the basics of what we can do with Copilot Cowork and talk more about the extension points. So what can we do beyond what's kind of out of the box? So let's do a quick level set of what exactly is Copilot Cowork for those of you that might not be familiar and haven't really tried it yet. So Copilot Cowork kind of is an element of Copilot, but it takes it from that chat kind of, ask and response based mechanism of working with Copilot into having it really delegate real work for us. So it's not just prompts, it can actually take actions. So we can give it one big task and it can think of all the subtasks needed and go through and be able to give us a working result at the end. So whether that is, helping you prep for out of office and canceling a bunch of meetings for when you're going out of office and setting up your out of office message and all of that, it can help us do all of that with just one prompt. So it just keeps iterating over. It can reason across multiple tools and files and help us do that. And it's observable and controllable. So along the way, as it tries to do things, it's going to return results and have us kind of approve and verify things. So that in a nutshell is what Cowork enables us to do. Now, how do we extend it though and go beyond the basics? Well, there's two main ways that we do this. It's with skills and plugins. So we looked a little bit earlier about SharePoint skills in the call. So we have that same kind of mechanism for skills when it relates to Copilot Cowork. So what a skill does is it's really just a specific instruction set. It's a markdown file. So we add those by just creating a markdown file, giving it that specific skill, that thing that we want it to do, whether it's to help us create a presentation or do some kind of financial analysis, whatever it might be. We just create that with a particular format, which we'll look at here in a second, in a markdown file, and then we upload that to our OneDrive. So the thing to know about skills when it comes to Copilot Cowork is they operate on a personal level. So Cowork itself is really a personal productivity tool. It's like having a coworker to help you. So with that, all the skills that you upload will be in your OneDrive file. So they'll be personal. They can be shared, with colleagues if you think they can benefit from it, but they're going to be pulling from your OneDrive and you manage those. Now, on the other hand, we have another way to extend Cowork with something called plugins. So this is a way to give Cowork almost a new domain expertise, and it combines skills. So you can have one or many skills in a plugin, but also data integrations by MCP. So we have several plugins that are built by Microsoft and third-party services that are available to us today in Cowork. And then we also have the ability to have custom skills. So we can turn any Claude Cowork plugin into a Copilot Cowork plugin as well. So these are managed at the Microsoft 365 admin portal level. So when we create a plugin and deploy those to the admin portal, then anyone using Cowork is able to utilize these plugins. So one, kind of mechanism of deciding between a skill and a plugin is the scope. Do you want to just use this yourself? Do you want to have this be something that's available org-wide to anyone using Cowork? And then more importantly, do you want that data integration element? So that's kind of the difference between skills and plugins. Now, looking at skills, we have a bunch of out-of-the-box skills already available to us in Cowork, so don't reinvent the wheel here. With these skills, we can do things like, calling agents to create Word, Excel, PowerPoint documents, PDFs. We have email skills, communications, daily briefing, search, all of this, right? So that's just available out of the box anytime that we're using Cowork. But we also have the ability to create custom skills. So this is where it becomes really powerful to make Cowork work in our business needs for our specific use cases. And as I mentioned earlier, a custom skill, all it is a markdown file. So you go into your OneDrive folder. So you'll have a new folder created under your name in OneDrive. There'll be a Cowork folder and a skills folder. So in there, you'll create new folders for every skill that you want. And you can have right now up to 50 different custom skills. Thing to know about the markdown files, generally best to keep these kind of smaller because they can only be 1 megabyte file size there. And again, these are personal because they are stored in your OneDrive. Now, key things to know about the Markdown file and the things that it needs to be able to call your skill correctly is the name. So this one would be for providing a Friday status. And then the description is very important because this is how Cowork knows when to call on that particular skill if you don't explicitly reference it. So this will give you a description of what it's supposed to do. Then you have the goal and the format. And there's lots of good use cases there of what you can do with skills as well. So there's repos that have a bunch of skills that you can check out. So what makes a good skill though? So that's just in a nutshell what a skill is. It's a markdown file. Great, we get it. But really the main things are the structure. So a lot of times when skills fail is you don't have the folder name matching what the actual skill name is because the name of the folder and the name of the skill need to match. And the other thing is bloat. So I really recommend keeping your skills as short as possible and making them single purpose. Don't try to make, one skill to rule them all. Really focus on one job, do that one job well, and then reference other skills. And the thing some people don't realize you can do with these skills is they can have companion reference files that Cowork only loads when it really needs to use them. So you can have 20 different files per skill. These can be things like if you're building a skill to help you with building PowerPoint decks, it can have templates that it needs to reference of what you want that to look like, whether it's your company brand standard, deeper instructions, sample data, and things like that. So those are kind of some use cases there. So to really make these work reliable, so sometimes people want to use a skill, but it's not being called reliably. So things to look out for, as I mentioned, is a description. Make sure that you have something really descriptive there because a vague description, it will never activate that way. So don't just say, let it know that, hey, when someone says check my inventory, then call this skill. So don't say like just help with data. Say review P&L for variances and analyzes for financials, right? Be as descriptive as possible. And then also don't expect to build a skill and it just work automatically, right? Exactly as you want it. That's just not how the real world works. You're going to iterate and you're going to constantly change these files. They're living, breathing files that you can reference and change as time goes on. So watch it fire, see what it does, change something, just one little thing at a time, rerun it, and tune that fast and live, and that'll help you there. And again, that folder name mismatch is the #1 cause of load failure. So make sure to check that out if you're having any issues. Now let's segue over to plugins. So we have a good idea kind of what a skill is, but when will we use a plugin? So as I mentioned, there's tons of out-of-the-box plugins. So all of the Dynamics applications, customer service, ERP sales, we have plugins we can use to integrate those with Cowork. Also Fabric IQ to bring in your Fabric data. And we have third-party services like Monday.com and Miro. But we also have the ability to create your own custom plugins. So you can really mix and match any combination of your custom skills plus MCP servers and put that in a plugin and start using this inside of Cowork. And the main thing I want you to know is the plugins plus skills is really a better together story, right? You're not going to typically have a plugin that's only a skill. Typically, you want some kind of, data integration, which is what the plugins offer, whether that's connecting to, Dynamics or maybe you want to integrate with GitHub, whatever it might be. You can do that with this integration. So that this gives you the best of both worlds, and the skills give the judgment. So plugins give you the reach into the data, and then the skills give you that judgment of how it should actually work and the steps it should follow. Now inside a plugin, so how it differs from what a skill looks like is, yes, you will have those skills. So you might have one or many skills and even reference files for skills in a plugin. But then you'll also have the connectors, that live data and APIs via MCP servers that you can connect to there. And then it's all packaged up how it differs from a skill in an application. So you would package this up as a zip in an M365 app. So you're going to have your manifest JSON that defines the schema and all that, icons, your skills folder that will be zipped up, and you'll deploy that in the Microsoft 365 App Store, same as we do our Teams apps and our Copilot agents. So therefore, everyone using Cowork is able to access this. Now, I've done a lot of talking, so let's go over and just see kind of what this looks like. Now, first, let's go over to Cowork itself and just refresh ourselves on where to get this. This is part of the Frontier program, so you do have to have the Frontier program enabled in your tenant. And then once you do, it would be an agent that you search for, and you would just search for Cowork, and then it would pop up there. So I already have that pinned here to my left nav, and now we're inside of Cowork. Now, Cowork, one of the things to know about it as well is it's not like typical Copilot where you put in a prompt and you get a relatively fast response, right? It's doing a lot behind the scenes. So when I'm demoing this, I tend to kind of queue some things up since you never know how long it's going to take to see what it can do. Now, when it comes to building skills, the first thing I want to point out is don't ever build a skill from scratch because that just is not needed. When I build skills, I have Cowork build a skill for me. So all you have to do is have something in mind of what you want to build. So in this case, I want a risk assessor skill. So I want to be able to put in some risks that we have and have the skill kind of estimate the likelihood and the impact and give kind of a skill level here. So I'm putting in this really simple prompt of what I want this skill to be able to do. And a skill you use when you want to replicate something again and again, right? You don't want to keep reprompting that. It's some kind of pattern template that you want to follow. And I put that skill in, and it's actually going to work, as we can see, in creating that for us. So it's verifying the skill, what it needs, and it's creating the skill folder, and it automatically puts that where it needs to go for you in your OneDrive folder. So let's go over to OneDrive, and we'll see where these skills live. So here I am in my documents for OneDrive, and then we have a Cowork folder. And then this is all your sessions. So any artifacts that Cowork creates, you'll have a sessions folder, and those will be stored there. But you'll also have this skills folder, and you'll have a folder for every single skill that you want to use here. So yes, very similar to SharePoint skills, kind of the same pattern that we have here. So there is that risk assessor skill that I asked Cowork to create for me. And it's just one, in this case, simple skill.md file. So we'll take a look at this in the format so you can get familiar. Again, we have the name. The description, very important, because that's what tells Cowork how it knows when to call this particular skill. And then you can do things like category and icons and all that. And then you have the skill itself. So what is this actually doing? So I'm just going to put some simple instructions of when to use this, what it does, when not to use it, because equally as important, like I don't want this to fire off anytime I'm asking to create a visual, only when I ask to create a very specific type of visual. Any inputs required, and then the step-by-step task that I want this skill to perform. So first extract the risk, then score, yada, yada, yada. You can be as detailed as you want here. And then guardrails at the bottom, which is important. And Cowork helped me create all this. So I have this skill. And then now let's take a look, and I'll show you how this all ties together how does the skill tie into a plugin? Now to look at a plugin, we're going to segue over to VS Code really quick. And I'm going to show you this plugin that I've created and I've been using for conference decks. So I could, Cowork itself is pretty good at creating PowerPoint decks, but there were a few things that I noticed as far as how it creates them, where it's kind of a dead giveaway that Cowork created this, and it doesn't really fit the narrative that I like to have in my conference decks. So what I did is I've not only created a skill for this to help create my kind of technical conference decks for my sessions that I do, where it kind of defines, what it should do, like at the discovery phase, because I really want to make sure everything's grounded, technical accuracy, of course, and then, formatted for how I want the session to be. So I'm doing that. And then equally more important is the story arc. So I want to really drive into, whether this is a keynote or a lightning talk or a workshop, the story arc is going to be a little bit differently, and I'm defining that inside of my skill. And then I want it to, instead of just creating the deck, I want it to first show me an outline. And I'm going to suggest links for how many slides for each of these. So I'm giving it all of this rich background information. And then I mentioned earlier, with skills, we can have reference files. So I have the skill itself, which, is not that big. I'm referencing some themes. But I have reference files in a folder called references for things like story arcs. So I'm giving it examples of different story arcs that I might have. So it can reference this when it's building out the conference deck for me. And I also have a certain set of design rules as far as typography that I want, font choices, text density, color, and all of that. So the skill can reference these other markdown files that I have here. Now, the thing that makes this a plugin, though, is it ties together these skills in with this manifest. So all the manifest is doing is giving it the name, all that, the description. But if we scroll down, this is where we reference the skills that is a part of this plugin. But we can also tie in services, as I mentioned. So I have this section for agent connectors. So this is where I can bring in an MCP server, in this case, the Microsoft Learn MCP server, so that when I does the research of the topic that I'm talking about here, it's going to reference the Learn MCP and not just go pull some random websites that I don't know are accurate, right? I can be assured that Microsoft Learn is keeping up-to-date information here, and it's only going to pull from that. So all of this is what makes up the plugin itself. So I'm integrating a connector, an MCP server here in the manifest, and then I'm calling the skill and these reference files. And I just package this up as a zip, and then I would go over into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and I would simply add an agent, in this case, choose the file, and upload that here, and it would be available for everyone to use. So how does this actually look like? Bringing this full circle, we looked at a skill, we looked at the plugin. How do we use this? So once you have your plugin deployed, if you go into Cowork, you have this plus button, and you should see this Manage Plugins section now. And this is where you can enable and disable in your particular Cowork instance which plugins you want to use. And this is that custom plugin that we just built there. We also have plugins for things like third-party services like Miro Cowork, as I mentioned, that you can use. So it's just a matter of browsing the plugins you want. As you can see, there are a lot, and toggling those on for your particular chat. So what I've did with this, so let's look at that conference deck plugin first, and again, this takes a while, so I've pre-ran this. And I just ask it to use the Conference Deck Builder plugin and help me build a deck about the new Power Apps MCP app capabilities that you can turn in a model-driven app into an MCP app in Copilot, right? So it's something that I need to talk about for a session coming up. Now, notice the first thing it did based off of my skill is it asked me some follow-up questions. What type of session is this? So I told it this was a breakout deep dive. How long do I want this to be? This is a 45-minute session. Who's the primary audience? And then what visual vibe do I want? So I wanted this to be really bold. So it gave those, follow-up information and matched it to my skill and those reference files. And then it went to work building the deck. So let's take a look at what it built. So we have kind of a fully functioning deck here, 40 slides, which is about good for 45 minutes if it's an overview. And it really is following the story arc. So pay attention to like the outline here. I wanted these nice kind of narrative visuals here. You built a great app, nobody opened it. Give the situation here, like months of real work go into building an app. It's about getting users to open it. So it's different than the typical just like topic, tons of text, right, deck that you might get. It's actually building a story for me and a narrative of why this matters as I go through it. So it's pretty cool what it's able to build with those guidelines that I put in thanks to that plugin that I built in the skill. And I know it's grounded in that technical accuracy because it's using the Learn MCP server in this case. So really nice. It's very bold colors. I'm honestly loving what it built. I think I can take this and run with it here. Now that's one example. Now let's look at also just one other quick one about how can you use an out-of-the-box skill. So this is an example of me using the Miro skill, plugin, and a custom skill that I have for process mapping. So what I did is pretty interesting. I have a meeting transcript, and I did this discovery meeting about this conference travel request agent that I need to build, right? And so I have all this, transcript information where we went back and forth and kind of talked about what exactly is needed to be built here. Now, rather than having to go and manually digest this and brainstorm out and create the process map, I just want Cowork to help me with this. So what I did was give it this transcript, and I said, hey, call my skill that takes and synthesizes this information, and then go call the Miro plugin and create a Miro visual for me. And that's exactly what it did. So it went through and it first got all the information from the transcripts and synthesized that. And if we go to Miro, this is what it created for me. So I have this flowchart automatically created from that meeting transcript that I have here. So just really shows the power of, I didn't have to do anything here. I just used an out-of-the-box plugin, connected it to my Miro account, and now I have this visual from that meeting transcript that I didn't have to build myself. So much you can do. It just really automates your day-to-day end work. I think just start thinking of what you can do with this. There's so many use cases. If you want to learn more and get hands-on with it, I have a few references here. In our Agent Academy, we have a special section for Cowork Collective. So that has right now, I think 3 or 4 different hands-on labs that show you different use cases. If you want to get hands-on with this, and we'll be building more, I'll do this conference plug-in example here in a little bit and get that out there. And then if you want to learn to build your own skill, there's a link there showing you the ins and outs of how that works. And then if you want to use or build a custom plugin, like I showed you, go to aka.ms/cowork-plugins. Takes you right to the documentation with all the steps that you need to get started with those plugins. So get started. Let me know what you build and hope you find something really useful to build with Cowork.